Podcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Fisdap Tips and Tricks webinar. Oh, sorry, not the first. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone that due to the volume of attendees, all lines have been muted. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them through the chat, and we will save some time to address them at the end of the webinar. Today's Tips and Tricks topic is Fisdap reports. Our host is Kurt Van Oort. Kurt is a solutions consultant and has been with Fisdap for over 4 years. So without further delay, I'll pass it off to you, Kurt.
Thanks, Haley. Can you hear me first of all?
I can.
All right, good. All right, thanks everybody for joining us. Is my screen on too? You should see the first slide.
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We're going to go through our new Fisdap Tips and Tricks format today, where we're trying to focus in little 20-minute sessions to really give you some focused functionality tips, and ending with some questions and answers. As questions pop up as you're going through, feel free to throw them into a chat, and I think Haley's going to keep track of those, and we'll go through those on the end with either myself or Ben Tape is on the line too to share his expertise. I'm going to work in the live program here in Fisdap, so we're going to head in there and talk about the 26 different reports that are actually sitting in Fisdap, and go through a few of those that we're pulling out as kind of fundamental type reports. We're going to go over some accreditation type of reports, and then we'll go through some of what I'm calling discovery type of reports. We will plan some more detailed in-depth dives into some specific reports in the future in our Fisdap tips and tricks. So when you are leaving the webinar today, there will be a survey that you can go through. And in the comments, maybe just write down 2 or 3 of the reports that you know of in Fisdap of those 26 that you may want a little bit more in-depth information on. And then we can build those out into the future based on what everybody needs. So make sure you do that on the way out. Everybody knows when you log into Fisdap, you come into this main look in here. What we're going to talk about today are reports and some functionality in that report menu. Like I mentioned, there are 26 of them. For some of you, this first functionality I just want to hit on real quick, which talks about settings. This little thing right here might be of good use to you. Of those 26 reports, there may be just a handful or 10 or maybe that you want to use. With this settings functionality, you can scroll through this whole list. And if your program, this is going to be program-wide, so it'll keep them away from everybody. But if in your program there's certain reports that you do not use, you can simply click on them like I did with this transition course. You can just click on the active, it'll make it inactive, and now it'll just shorten your list and get you focused on the things that are important to you and your team. The first thing we'll go about talking about next is the goals widget. You may have seen this in other areas within Fisdap when students are inputting data, or you're looking at students' data. This is just a quick way to get to that goals widget and go ahead and get a quick glimpse as to how students are progressing. In here, you're going to go ahead and select one student at a time, and you'll select their name, and it's going to load that goals widget, which is going to give you a look into, how is this individual student performing in their lab requirements. You drill down and see exactly what they're doing based on peer-to-peer and instructor requirements that you set up in your settings. I can also take a look at their graduation requirements report here. And again, this is the quick glance that students can get to look at to see how are they progressing, and then also the CoAEMSP airway management report. So that's what that little goals button is. I look over that all the time, so I just wanted to hit all these little things as we're going through. The recent reports tab here, this is a great thing to use if you're running the same report on multiple students or something like that. What it's going to do is list all of the most recent reports that you looked at as an individual user. So this will become user specific. It won't show the whole program. It'll just be what you under your user account have looked at in the past, and it'll pull it up and simply let you go in and edit your criteria that you're sorting by, maybe select a different student, change some criteria, and then really run that report again real quickly. There's also the ability to sort that reports list by these categories. You'll note down here underneath each one in kind of a faded font, it tells you, where these different what this report falls into category-wise. And this just gives you a real quick thing. If I'm a paramedic program, I just want to see accreditation type of reports. hit accreditation, and anything tagged with accreditation pops up. And so it's a quick way maybe to jump around and see if there's certain things that you want to look to go through. The final thing, which I'll demonstrate too, is this search bar is real handy. You can start typing in this box, and what that's going to do is take those 26 reports and go ahead and narrow them down. As you start typing, it's going to filter through and pull everything up. The first general report that I want to talk about is the lab practice item report. General reports, I'm gonna go through real quick, is lab practice reports, graduation requirements report, an hour report, and attendance report. And these are basic reports that everybody uses, whether you're an EMT program or a paramedic program. We'll run through those. In the lab practice report, what this is going to do is pull data on lab practice items that you have set up in Fisdap. You know, we're going to set your peer-to-peer requirements, instructor requirements. You're going to use or not use a digital skill sheet, those types of things. Your fields for selection, this is a report that you run by provider level. You do have a date range to go in. And I'm going to show an example of the summary and also detailed. Reports, summary, of course, what you're going to look at to get a feel for how everybody's doing. Detailed will help you dive down student by student if you see something that looks a little bit off. The inactive piece, yes or no, this relates to when you set up your lab practice items, you may have some that you have hidden. What that means is they're still in the system, but students can't select them to do that lab practice item. If you would like to include some of those inactive ones, maybe you're looking at something for an older student and you use a different lab practice item and you have one hidden, you can say no, and then it's just going to pull out your active ones. And we're going to select the students. I'm going to go ahead and process that report. While that's running, it doesn't take that long, but I'm going to move on because we are trying to get a lot done in 20 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and get the detailed one cubed up. And it's the same fields. I'm just going to go through and say I'm a paramedic. I want to do the detailed. And now here's where I can go through and just grab a very specific student and get the detailed reports from that student. Now we're back at the summary one. So for the lab practice item, I'm looking at all my students. So what I'm going to see first is just a group of here's all the students I'm looking at and how are they doing percentage overall on how many different skills they needed to do for peer and instructor sign off. Below that, I'm going to see if I selected active and inactive, I will see my active items first. And it's simply going to list every lab practice item. It's going to show your individual students. What their goal requirement is on the top. And then how they are doing is always going to be listed down here. And with Fisdap reports, as students meet requirements, we try to make them green for ease of use. And ideally, if you run the summary report on your students and everybody's at 100%, you know that they're all there. Where you may use a detailed one is to spot check a student or to go in and you have one that's fallen behind or isn't on track like everybody else. That then is where we can run a detailed report on that student. And here what you're going to see is you're going to see every attempt that was made on each individual lab practice item. What's cool about this as you go through is you'll see a search bar up here on each of those sections, and that's going to pertain to just that section. If I start typing fail, it's going to sort through, and of the 12 things here, I'm showing they failed 6 of them, and it's going to show me exactly which one. So each little section has its own search bar to filter that out. When you see a colored link like this, again, our yellow is a lab, so I know this was done in lab. I have a question on one. It's very simple here, just to open up right to that shift. Now this is going to open it up, and I like to open up things in new windows so I can stay where I was. Now this is actually opening up that shift where the student attempted a orotracheal intubation of an adult, and it's going to show me that exact shift when it pulls up, and we'll let that run. So you can do summary, and then advanced detailed, and then get down into a specific shift and actually see that data. We'll move down from that, from the lab practice report to a graduation requirements report. In this report here, I'm going to be looking at graduation requirements that have been established by the program when it comes to patient age groups, impressions, complaints, patient contacts, team leads, all those kind of things. We do have some goal setting videos that go through and select how do you set your goal set. You can look those up. Maybe we'll have one again in the future. But once the goals are established, when I come through here, the first thing I'm going to do is select which goal set do I want to look at. And this is an area where if you're a college-based program and you work in semesters, you do have the ability to set up, semester 1, semester 2, semester 3, and then go ahead and have an overall course. It allows you to break things down into smaller bite-sized pieces. Every program does come with the 2017 requirements as a template, and you can add your own as you go. Here, this is going to allow me to choose, maybe just I'm looking at clinical and field activity, or I could look at individual sites. I can also select the patient types. So I'll just look at live human patient contacts. I can get rid of, any of the mannequins. I'm just going to pull data being filtered by these different areas. Again, I do have a date range. Now here I can look at either all shifts or just shifts that have been audited. My next step is to choose my ALS definition. There are a few you can choose from. Fisdap, and it gives examples of each one and what it is down here. So once you choose one of those, I'm going to go ahead and select students and hit run and let that run. And while that's running, I'm going to pull up the next one that pulls a lot of data. So it may take a little bit more time to do that. So while the graduation group report is pulling up, I'm going to go ahead and switch to an hour report. An hour report is going to allow me to look at hour completion based on the requirements that are there. Here we're pop back to graduation requirements report. This is going to go through and pull that group of students again. Here up in the top in the header, I will see my requirement. I will see observed versus performed. And now we can go through and see and make sure that students are progressing towards their graduation requirements. Again, our reports turn green when benchmarks are met. And so getting towards the end of the course or at completion of course, they should be green all the way down. Below showing each student, we're going to go into array management. Again, show each student, and we can go through that whole graduation requirements report and see things based on that. And the search bar is also there for graduation requirements. As we pop back to the hours report, I'll show you a couple of different viewpoints. One might be you just want to go in and see the hours that are done by site. So you're going to be able to select your display format. I'll do 2 of them just to show you differences. Default, we've got scheduled hours, locked hours, and audited hours are all turned on. You do have the ability to turn those on and off. And what they should do is scheduled is going to be the largest, locked hours will fit inside of that, and audited will fit inside of that. So it's a natural progression of those hours. I will pick the group of students again and run this one. I also want to show you another one of the hourly reports, which will break things down a little bit more by not just the site, but maybe also you want to see department and base information. We'll do this one, same format. Grab those 9 students and hit go. And again, these reports in the beginning are just the 4 general reports that every program can use, whether you're an EMT, paramedic, what it might be, to go ahead and do. So here's the one we did first that was strictly by site type. So this is saying for all students, what was scheduled, what was locked, and what was audited. If you have the auto lock feature on, as you progress towards an end of a course, ultimately these should match. But it will show you the difference of what students are scheduled to go into and what are locked, and then also what have been audited by instructors. Below that, it's just going to show each individual student and then what their total hours were for clinical, field, and lab. The site-based report, what that one will do, is going to set up, again, it's going to pull all your students together, but now you'll see instead of just saying what was done at clinical field, we're actually seeing the individual sites here. If I just want to see all ERs, again, I can type in ER, so this search functionality fits in just this area. That's going to give me a broader breakdown of at Almost Home Kids, what was the time spent by my students in the ER and anesthesia. And then below this, it's going to go ahead and show each individual student and where they're spending their time. The most active student is down at the bottom, and we'll see exactly where they're spending their time in all of their shifts and meeting all of their hourly requirements. The next one, and what the general reports are, is attendance. Attendance is kept track of by the student when they're submitting their shift reports. They have the ability to say I was tardy, I was absent with permission. and so forth. And again, here we're going to see a summary and a detailed view. So when I run a summary report, I can select all locations. I can just pick individual locations. Again, whatever I would like to do. Just stick with all of them. I could put in a date range. A summary one, I'll grab all my students and run that one. And I'll also do a detailed one. For this summarized report, it's grabbing all of my students, and it's actually keeping track of where they were tardy, absent with permission. Out of 96 shifts, the student was on time 92 times. We can go down and see that. This is the report where if I have a student that's more of an issue, I may want to drill down deeper on that individual student. So that's where my detailed report's going to be. For my detailed report, like some other detailed reports, I can only select one student at a time. But it's going to give me a real detailed look into that student's activity, and I can really see without having to scroll through or look through a whole bunch of individual shifts. I can run this report, and I can see for this individual student, here I can see tardy. At this point, they typed in a comment that they ran over the cat. That's why they were tardy. A bunch of on time. So I wanted to see just tardy. Again, my sort tool is really going to pull that out. And you can see they have a rough time with running over smaller animals and being tardy from it. But these are ways that I can narrow in on attendance if it's pulled out from that summary report that I have a troubled student. Let's jump into some. If you find that people aren't meeting certain requirements, or you just want to get into some skills that students have done and really find out why something might not have been there. I was talking with Ben getting this set up, and one of the things he uses a lot of times when people call in and have questions on reports and data not looking right, one of the first things he does is he uses skill finder reports to go ahead and take a peek into really what's happening, if something's marked observed over performed and things like that. This is a great report that's going to allow you to go into all your locations. Again, you can use a date range, but I can actually go in and say if they were talking about something to do with IVs or something, I can again pull all students or find an individual student. And something I skipped over on the earlier ones I mentioned real quick, many of the reports and features within Fisdap, you'll see this gray filter bar, and this is going to allow you to pull students up maybe by a specific group. So if you coordinate your students into groups, then you can just pull up those students and look at them only and not look at all the active students that are in your program. So the filter is a great way to narrow down your student list to make it more functional. Once you've selected those students, we'll go ahead and run that skills finder report where we're looking at Venus Access. And this is where it's going to show the students observed, performed. And I'll go down here where this person is. And here you can see a whole lot of stuff. And I'm going to point at the search bar again, just because it does work when you're looking for specific stuff. If I want to look at anything to do with left arms or left forearms, just as a simple example, I can go ahead and narrow those 92 entries down to the 10 that deal with that left arm. Again, anytime we see this green or blue or yellow date over here, it means that if I've gone through and maybe a student said, I know I've met this requirement, but I'm coming up short, here's where you can go in and see at a glance really quick. Here's an observed, was this really a performed? Maybe it just needs to be switched. If I want to access this shift, I can just go right here to this date, and it's going to pull up the shift, and I'm going to be able to go in and see that patient encounter. And if it does need to be changed to a performance over an observation, I can go ahead and do that, and then it will adjust those numbers as well. So here, if it was marked as an observed, I could count this as a performed skill rather than observed, and then we'll go ahead and be able to pinpoint that, get it changed, and then it will help update my reports. So Skills Finder is a real great report to find things, and then also we have our skills report. The skills report itself, this really lists everything that's been done, just things that are dumped in here and gathered. This is where you're going to find them. Again, we can do date range. This capstone date in the user profile for the student, you can actually put in a capstone date for that individual. And now this report can be run from the beginning of the capstone date or through the capstone, and so you can really break things down. So if I wanted to see just something from the student's capstone, I can go ahead and put that in. The requirements template here, this is really just used for your age breakdowns. So if you want to select a different one, it'll do that. I can select my student. Again, we'll grab Kurt and look at what's going on as far as skills. And this is going to give me a really detailed look into if I'm trying to find something that doesn't look right. This is a great report in how to find that. Well, that's pulling up, that's going through all that data. I want to jump into some accreditation reports and trying to keep these short. We're running low already, but let's hit a few of those. In the first two I'll talk about, if you're a paramedic program and you're getting used to this Appendix G, don't pull out your hair yet. We're still collecting some of the wires on the back end to make these reports work out properly. I'm sure we'll make a big announcement as they come through and we got all the little wires connected properly and stuff's reporting right. We've narrowed down a bunch of little fixes. The work has been done. We just have to get it into a live status, and that'll help clear up a lot of these. But do know that the new Appendix G, this report here, actually what we do for the first time is we're creating the actual CoAEMSP spreadsheet that CoAEMSP wants you to send to them either upon request or maybe on an annual basis. I haven't heard the details, but I'm sure somebody from there can let you know. And what you're going to do in this process is simply select the cohort that you're looking at. This would be a great way to use your groups. If you don't use groups, we can teach you how to set that up with a quick call to our solutions consultant team and show you how to do that. But this is where I could pick the last graduated group and go ahead and pull up those students. And I'll hit go and let that run. And again, what that's going to do is create the actual spreadsheet that CoA needs. Here I'm taking a quick peek back to the skills report. That's really going to show you, here I selected what the student did, and I use that capstone date range. And up here what it's doing is, because of how I set that, is it's only grabbing data from the start of that student's capstone. So I can see what's being done just in that period. But you're going to see all kinds of data from clinical and field. Just because that's what I selected, I didn't select lab. It's going to show you everything that's been done for this student. And so again, to help pinpoint things or find things, this is a way to do it, to see if they've been marked as an observation or if they actually performed them. Once we get back to this CoAEMSP Appendix G, and I'm going to stop in just a few minutes here and see if there's any questions before I move on to any other reports after this one. But this one here is where you're actually going to download a spreadsheet. So for the first time when it comes to this report, we're not printing off a bunch of paper reports that you're going to need to plug into the CoAEMSP required spreadsheet, because they do require that spreadsheet in this instance. We're actually going to create that spreadsheet for you, and we've had that reviewed by CoA and they signed off on it. That's all in the right format, and so that'll make this annual type of submission of here are my minimums. And what this report does too, the Appendix G spreadsheet, Table 1 pulls live data from Fisdap on all of the encounters your students have had and plugs them into Table 1. Tables 2, 3, and 4, all this does at this point, and it's what's required at this point, is it's going to set in, here's the minimums that we've established. And again, we'll create that spreadsheet for you. The last one I will hit, I'm going to hit Appendix E and F, because they have some cool things built into that I think make life easy for everybody as we're going through and doing these different appendices for CoA. You can run it on a whole bunch of stuff, but what I want to point out here is, if you take the time to go into your sites, you can actually put in a lot of the required data that needs to be plugged into that true Appendix E and F form. And once you enter it, it stays in there. But now when I run my Appendix E and F report, I don't just get the data that I need to plug into it. It will actually have all the data plus all this information that's needed, whether it's a clinical site or field sites. They require a little bit more information. But I can simply, if I didn't do it on the front end for my sites, I can do it at this point and actually go in and open up that edit page, and I can plug all of this stuff right into the site. And then from that point on, it will always be there. This is what allows me to enter that stuff, and now I don't need to input it at a later time. With 5 minutes left, I'll take a quick breath and ask Haley if any chats came through, any questions come up.
Yeah, Kurt, this is Ben, not Haley, but there was a question that came in. Is there any way to get an hours report for attended hours? And there are sort of two ways of doing that. One is on the hours report itself. There is the locked hours option when you're deciding what you want to run it for, and the locked hours will take into account attendance. So if a student was absent for a shift, their locked hours will not include the shift, even if it was locked, if they were not attending it. The other option, this might be an easier way to see it, specifically what you're looking for, is not actually in the reports, but on the shift list itself. So Kurt, if you could go to the skills tracker and pull up one of your students. And you may not realize it, but at the bottom of the shift list, there are actually a handful of interesting tidbits that can be helpful to see what the students are doing at a glance. And a lot of shifts for this student. But at the bottom, there's hours, and it's going to say scheduled, absent, attended, and audited. So the absent and attended should together equal the scheduled. The only thing it doesn't show here that the hours report does show is the lock. So if you're just looking for total number of attended hours, you don't care about locked or not, this is going to be the place that you want to check out. So at the bottom of the page. And then as well, not necessarily what was asked for, but there's also the patient care information and attendance in general. So that would be how you would want to check that out. For the whole cohort, as the follow-up question was just asked, that you would probably want to use the hours report itself and choose the locked option. And again, it just would only be for the shifts that are locked. And you would, every time you run the hours report, it's going to, if you run it for more than one student, it will actually show a total first. So it has a box that has the total number of hours that you selected. And then it'll also show the students individually as well. So
do I run just locked, you were saying?
You can do, as long as locked is included, it basically will put a column extra for scheduled and audited. But yeah, you just definitely want to make sure locked is included. And so once this loads, we should see, again, there'll be a total option at the top, all students, so it has their all total hours. And then if you scroll below, it'll break it down for each student and their option. So know that these locked shifts are only the shifts that they attended and have locked.
So if it's a locked shift and they were absent for some reason, then those hours are not included.
Exactly right.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Ben. With a couple minutes left, I won't jump into another one. Again, this is a broad look of some of the reports. Maybe there's a little piece of functionality that you picked up that you didn't know about, and things are ready to go. So we hope you got something out of this. Haley, do you want to close up? Oh, and make sure when you guys leave, if you fill out that survey, just take a second and put, of your list of reports, what's your top 2 that you would like more deep dive on it, and we'd like to create a tips and tricks in the future that maybe we're showing as the patient input, you're setting up the goals for this report, and now you're actually running reports and show that whole process on some very specific reports that are important to you, you all. And we appreciate your support and everything you do for us. Haley, you want to close it out?
Yeah, great. Thank you, Kurt and Ben, and thank you to everyone for joining us today. We hope to have you join us for the next Tips and Tricks webinars on October 2nd and 16th. To stay up to date on upcoming webinars or to see recordings of previous webinars, you can go to go.fisdap.net/tipsandtricks. As Kurt mentioned, there will be a quick survey after the webinar, so as he said, please be sure to give any future topics that you have in mind, and then let us know your thoughts on today's webinar, and if you have any questions that weren't addressed today. So thank you, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you.